My dad asked, "Are you really our child?" while looking at my report card. I grew up in a family of doctors, so I always thought I had to follow the same path. I worked hard in school and always had good grades, but to my dad, who was a doctor himself, that wasn't enough. He would always say, "If you're not at the national level, it doesn't count." Hearing that over and over, I started to hate the idea of becoming a doctor. My name is Mia, and both of my parents are doctors, as are most of my relatives. I have an older sister, Emma, who was always the favorite. Everyone expected her to become a doctor, and she did, without any problems. I think it's impressive, but she got everything she wanted, and even the smallest things were praised. She was spoiled, and I was jealous. I was constantly compared to Emma, and no matter what I did, I was told I wasn't good enough. Emma is 5 years older than me, but my parents treated it like I was failing when I couldn't do what she could do. Things got worse when Emma started getting stressed out from her studies. She would take it out on me, calling me names and sometimes even getting physical, but I never told anyone, knowing my parents wouldn't believe me. I went to a college prep school, but I never planned to go to college after all the abuse. I left home, started working part-time, and saved up enough money to get by for a while. When I graduated high school, I found a job at a hotel in a tourist area. Since I was still a minor, I needed my parents' consent, and they signed the papers without saying a word. They probably just wanted me gone, the failure that I was. I didn't hear from them for over 6 months until Dad called me right before the new year. "Come home for the celebration. The relatives are gathering, and you'll be the host," he said, and hung up before I could respond. At home, it's tradition for all the relatives to gather for a big New Year's feast. Since they're all doctors, it's always a painful experience for me. I end up doing all the chores, from cleaning the day before to preparing food, drinks, and getting everything ready for the relatives staying over. I was the one doing it all. Mom just told me what to do, and Emma ignored me completely. I always wondered why it had to be me, but I felt guilty for not following the family medical path, so I just went along with it. I thought I wouldn't be called back since I left home, but Dad contacted me, so I decided to go home for just one day. My hotel job was really busy, and I couldn't take much time off. I planned to go home and leave quickly, using work as an excuse. When I got home, Dad yelled, "You're late. Everyone's coming soon. Why didn't you come back yesterday?" But I was busy at work during this time of year, and taking even one day off was hard. I tried to explain, but he snapped, "Stop making excuses. Hurry up and get ready." He wouldn't listen to me at all. I entered the house, and there was no sense of relief in coming back. I just cleaned, cooked, and got drinks ready as Mom told me to. As the relatives arrived and the party started, I stayed out of the way like usual. But that was easier for me. All they did was talk about the hospital and gossip about patients. It was a place filled with negativity. I started to think that being a doctor just meant talking badly about people. For me, it wasn't a fun space at all, but Emma seemed to enjoy it, making fun of the doctors and patients while I carried drinks. One of the relatives, Tom, came up to me and said, "So, Mia, you couldn't become a doctor, huh?" with a smirk. It made me feel disgusted. I wanted to tell him that I didn't fail to become a doctor. I just didn't want to be like someone who couldn't live without putting others down, but I kept those words to myself because saying them would just waste my energy. As the night went on, I escaped from my family home. My parents complained about cleaning and who would entertain the relatives the next day, but I didn't care. "I have to work early tomorrow," I said, not even bothering to change my clothes. I just said that and quickly left for the bus. That was the only contact I had with my family for the entire year. When it came around again, I thought, not again. Every year, I'd take a day off, go home, and immediately leave. It wasn't that I didn't find it annoying, but it was just one day a year. I had lived at home until I finished high school, and they even paid for my prep school, even though I wasn't going to college, so I thought it wouldn't hurt to show my face once in a while. 7 years have passed since then, and now I'm 25. I still visit home once a year, and nothing has changed. It was that time of year again, I thought, when the phone rang. I assumed it was Dad, but when I looked at the screen, I saw an unexpected name. It was Emma. I rarely get calls from Emma. I answered the phone, worried something had happened to my parents, but to my surprise, Emma was in a great mood. "Hey, you know that young CEO at your work? He's been on TV a lot recently, right?" she said excitedly. I was confused and a little worried. "Yeah, he's opened a few new hotels, so he's been on TV more," I replied. Emma laughed and said, "Introduce me to him." I saw him on TV, and I'm in love with him. He's a young master, right? He'd be perfect for me. I was speechless. I couldn't believe she was calling me for something like this. What does she mean by perfect for me? I thought, gentle Jack and Emma, who always looks down on others, would never be a match. While I was trying to process everything, Emma kept talking. Oh, I get it. You, a lowly worker, wouldn't have the chance to meet the CEO. Maybe you've never even met him. Even if you have, a plain woman like you wouldn't stick in his memory. I stayed quiet, but Emma just kept going. I bet you know when the CEO is coming to your hotel. I didn't know how to respond when Emma said, I'll stay there that day. If I meet him in person, he'll fall for me. There's no way he'll resist someone like me. She wanted me to make a reservation for her, and since I was doing her a favor, she insisted I cover the cost. I was stunned, but I reminded her that she was supposed to be going through arranged meetings for marriage. Wasn't it a family tradition for her to marry by 30 through these arrangements? I thought Emma had already been doing that, but what she was talking about now felt out of place. Arranged meetings? There was no one good enough. Just the other day, Emma had been introduced to a 35-year-old guy, and she looked down on him too. I was surprised she even felt that way about the people she was meeting for marriage, but I still didn't want to introduce her to Jack. I told her it was impossible and hung up the phone. A month later, on New Year's Day, I went home for just one day, planning to entertain my relatives as usual and leave quickly. But this year, they were unusually critical. You work at a hotel, don't you, Sarah? I can't believe you're okay with such a low-level job, said Tom. Then Mom joined in, surprised I could work in a job less important than theirs. Even Dad added, I'm glad you left the house early, so I don't have to hear from the neighbors about what you're doing. I knew they felt that way, but hearing it all at once was still painful. As I felt myself sinking into sadness, Emma laughed. You don't have anything going for you, so you'll be alone forever, right? Her words snapped me out of my slump, and I wanted to fire back at her. I finally let out the emotions I'd been holding in. Emma, you're 30, 5 years older than me. What will you do if you keep setting such high standards? You'll be left behind, I blurted out. Dad was furious. How dare you say that about Emma? Apologize now. My parents always sided with Emma. She was their favorite. If that's the case, I wish you two would stay a family of 3 forever, I sighed, ignoring Dad's anger. That made him even more upset. What's with that attitude? Who do you think raised you? Mom nodded beside him, and the relatives all agreed with them. I was so fed up, but before I could speak, Dad yelled, A failure like you is a shame to our family. Get out now. His face was mocking. I took a deep breath and said, I won't be coming here anymore after this year, grabbing my things and walking toward the door. Thank you for everything up until now. As I opened the door, I heard the sound of a car outside. When I stepped out, a luxury car was parked there. My parents and Emma came outside, and a man got out of the driver's seat. Emma was the first to recognize him. You, President? She gasped. It was Jack, the CEO of my company. The very person Emma had asked me to introduce. Jack walked toward the entrance and Emma eagerly asked, Sarah, could it be the CEO? I laughed, saying, Sorry to keep you waiting. I was just leaving. I turned to Jack and said, I thought it was about time, so I came to pick you up. Our conversation left my parents and Emma stunned. The relatives came outside to see what was going on, and Dad stared at Jack, dumbfounded. Jack walked up to Dad. I apologize for my late greeting, he said, and I leaned in close to him and whispered, He's my fiancé. We're getting married next month. Huh, was the sound that escaped Emma's mouth. My parents, too, were in shock. I laughed and added, But I don't plan to invite you to the wedding. I have no attachment to this house, so I don't think I'll be back. I guess this wasn't the place for me to return to after all. After Jack proposed, he wanted to meet my parents, so I explained my situation. Everyone understood after hearing about the bad reputation of the hospital. Emma had mentioned it too, so Jack decided to come and pick me up, ignoring my shocked family. I continued. By the way, there's a new hotel opening near Dad's hospital. I'm working on the project, and when I was doing the research, I found out that Dad's place has been involved in medical malpractice and scandals. Is that right, Dad? Dad's face changed color and he stammered. You're not involved in this, are you? The locals were shocked by the bad reputation of Dad's hospital, and Emma worked there too. Are you sure it's okay? Someone asked. The locals were quick to point out the shared reputation between Dad and Emma, calling them like father, like daughter. At that moment, I learned about the scandals involving Dad and Emma, and I felt somewhat responsible for it. I became determined to make the hotel business a success and win over the locals. Meanwhile, Dad and Emma looked pale, their faces drained of color. Since I had told Jack everything, he simply opened the passenger door without any unnecessary words. I met Jack after leaving home under the previous president's policy. Jack, as the next president, was working in the field, and we became close. I later learned that Jack had fallen for me at first sight. Unlike before, when I was constantly belittled, the more I worked hard, the more I was appreciated. I worked because I enjoyed it, and Jack seemed to like that attitude. After Jack became president, following the previous one's illness, he proposed to me about 6 months ago. His words asking for my support really resonated with me. Since accepting his proposal, I've been learning a lot about business, and I realized I don't mind studying as long as it's something I enjoy. I hated studying to become a doctor, but when I find something fun, I want to learn more. As I was about to get in the car, Dad yelled, "Hey, Sarah, what's going on?" I smiled and said, "I'm no longer a daughter of this house. Goodbye," and left my confused family behind. The car drove off quietly. Later, the new hotel opened successfully, and I was working on-site from day one. It was fully booked. Then Dad and Emma showed up. Dad, who spotted me, called out, "We came to see what kind of work you're doing and to stay over. Prepare the room quickly." I was too busy managing the site to respond, but I couldn't believe his nerve. Jack rushed over to send them away, but they made a scene in the lobby. A security guard stepped in, and a woman named Brooke, a nurse at Dad's hospital, overheard the commotion and laughed. She shared the story with her colleagues, and it spread quickly, causing Dad and Emma embarrassment. Brooke also mentioned that Mom was forced to retire due to a scandal at the hospital, which I overheard. I had to attend to another job at a different hotel when my parents and Emma showed up again. Frustrated, I called the police, and they were taken away for obstructing business. The rumors about their past spread quickly, and the hospital, already struggling financially, was forced to shut down. I later saw that their house was vacant, likely sold in financial desperation. I also heard that Emma's matchmaking attempts had failed, which might have forced them to leave. I changed my cell number so they couldn't contact me and had no intention of reaching out to them. With the hotel business settled, I'm excited for my wedding next month with Jack. Both my career and personal life are brighter than ever.